Today, I'm going to speak about engaging your offline network online, okay? And this is such a timely topic because if you've been attending a lot of events and doing networking and going to conferences, and that has been one of your main business channels, the current situation can be quite frustrating. But I see it as a huge advantage if you've already been building up that network offline. There's actually a huge advantage for you coming on online and using that. And I'm going to show you that throughout this presentation. So if events have been your #1 business channel, then you probably have a stack of business cards, people that you maybe contact from time to time to have face-to-face coffees, or you ring them up, but you do have a network, you have a contact base. Now, if you're like me, whenever you go to an event, you get maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes, if you're lucky, to have a chat with someone, and usually you move on to the next person. You might ask for their business card, you might give them yours, and you move on to the next person. You might make a mental note to touch base with that person later, or to find a little bit more about what that company does, and so on. But how good are we with actually following up? Like, how good are we at going back, after an event or some meeting, and sitting down and actually debriefing and looking at your notes from that discussion, or making plans to meet that person up again or send a follow-up email? We're generally not great at following up. So on this, I'm going to talk about how you can engage online when you already have an offline network. We're going to talk a little bit more about that whole follow-up aspect of things, how you can add value to people online, especially if you're not great at that kind of online sharing of content, like on LinkedIn. If you're not great at that, that's not a problem at all. Through this conversation today, you'll go from kind of zero engagement, wherever you are, maybe zero or little, to actually adding value to people online, and people you've already met before, people who know you, and you can then start adding value in different ways to those people. Towards the end of the call, I'm going to provide some resources. So there's going to be a few things to download, a few things that you can kind of take away and do now to become successful online. And don't worry if writing isn't your thing or content isn't really your thing. This is not going to be about writing white papers or even blogs. It's not going to be about big productions of, videos or creating explainer videos. It's not that. It's really the lowest entry point that you can do now to start getting results and making sure that you're keeping top of mind with the people that you already know. So why me? Why am I the person to be telling you about this? Well, I've got 15 years of experience across different roles. So I started life as an engineer. I'm actually a chemical and petroleum engineer. And I started in technical sales roles when I joined Schlumberger in 2006. And I've gradually moved into B2B marketing leadership roles. And I am now a business owner. So I co-own ᴏғғʟɪᴇ with Sarah Downs, who's also on the call. And I've been a business owner for 4 years. So first I owned Your Marketing, and then we merged in 2018 and created ᴏғғʟɪᴇ. We've dealt with over 50 clients in that time. I've also written a book around B2B social media, which was based on research with companies like Dell, Cisco, GE, those type of companies. But I think one of the key things that really qualifies me today is that because I'm a business owner and a marketing professional, I understand that whole buying journey and the buying cycle. As a marketer, I understand that journey from a marketing perspective and the sort of things you need to be saying at different points. But I also understand it from the point of view of a business owner, because we have to deal with buying cycles and different people within a complex sales journey. And we have to be ready to, have those discussions, and those discussions change depending on where the buyer is in the journey, whether they're brand new, they've never met you, or whether they've met you and they need a bit more of a conversation, or whether they're just, a couple of steps from actually buying. So Sarah and I understand that a lot in terms of being a business owner. So when we talk about content and marketing, it's really a big deal, because as recently as February this year, there was research to show that B2B buyers consume an average of 13 content pieces before deciding on a vendor. Okay, now that we're in this kind of lockdown situation and businesses are, I guess, not as active as they would have normally been, you probably find that that number is higher now, where B2B buyers have more time to look for content, and this number could be as much as 15, maybe even 17 pieces of content. So there's definitely an opportunity to continue conversations with your audience, with your prospects, with your contacts. I'm just going to have a quick check. So a few more people have joined the call. Welcome, those of you that have just joined the call. You haven't missed too much. Okay, so when we talk about consuming content online, we've already said there's an average of 15, but over half of that content is actually on social media. So B2B buyers, 52 or 53% of them, go to social media for that content, and only 33%, or a third of them, rely on word of mouth. This might surprise some of you, because I know that many businesses that we work with or that we know of rely heavily on word of mouth. And word of mouth is great because it's really credibility. Someone saying, yeah, I know them, I've worked with them, they're great. When you meet someone at an event, it's word of mouth as well. You're getting to actually talk to the person face to face. It's a form of word of mouth. And these numbers might look different if you're in a B2C situation where you are a business selling to consumers. So, like retail, or you've got a little shop somewhere. If you're dealing with people one-on-one, I think word of mouth is really powerful and could lead people to make a decision about whether to buy from you. What this stat is showing is that in terms of B2B, it's less of an opportunity, word of mouth. B2B buyers, because of the nature of the investment, because the nature of the number of people in the organization that need to agree, they look more to social media for that content. And actually, one stat that isn't here is that 70% of B2B buyers go to your website to get this content that they require to decide. So if you've started a conversation with somebody offline already, or a group of people offline, it is not the time to become quiet. You actually have an advantage, because unlike someone who is starting from scratch, your offline contacts already know you. They've met you. So really what this conversation is going to be about today is taking that conversation online. Are there any questions? I'm just going to pause and find out if there are any questions. Okay. All right, good to go. If you've got any questions, we'll take a bunch of questions at the end, but if you've got it in your head, feel free to put it in the chat. And from time to time, I'll go into the chat and pick up a couple of questions if they're there. Okay. So don't go quiet. You should keep kind of having these conversations with people and being top of mind. They might not buy it now or today, but because they keep seeing information from you, you're going to be top of mind. So when they do need your services, when things do turn around, you are the person that they will get in touch with to have that further conversation. So anyone that knows me quite well, especially in professional circles, know that I like to draw. And one thing I used to draw a lot is robots. Fortunately, we have a decent graphic designer in our business. And so she's taken my scribbles and made them look good, which I'm grateful for. Robots Limited is a fictitious company that I came up with a few years ago. And what I'm going to show you is the impact of misalignment when you're not constantly sharing your message, not just externally to an audience or a group of prospects, but also internally. So whether you have a team or it's just you, even the reflecting, you personally reflecting on what your key messages are, how you want to describe your products and services, that is a good exercise to do. And if there's a misalignment, meaning what you actually do is different from what people think you do, then you could have quite a big problem on your hands. For those of you that's just joined, I've seen a couple more people who've joined. This is a recorded session, so you will get the full recording later. So please just, continue with us, and you'll be able to watch the earlier content later when we send out the recording. Okay, so Robots Limited. So, have you ever seen a situation like this? I bet that many of you have, especially if you've worked in kind of medium-sized companies or corporate organizations. I know I definitely have, where your sales guy is describing the robot at number one. That's what he's describing to prospects. When he explains to them what you do as a business, that is the robot that he's describing to prospects. But when marketing puts out videos every once in a while, people get the impression that the robot looks like number two. That's what they get from that video. That's the message that they're getting. However, your engineering guys in the workshop are actually building robot 3. That is what you sell, in fact. But it looks a little bit like robot 1, slightly, maybe the eyes. It has the same color as the marketing videos, but it's not the robot that people think that you actually sell. And then finally, if you've been having conversations with your prospects and your customers, you would have understood that number 4 is actually what they need. When they review their challenges and what they need to take them forward, they need robot number 4. Now, this is where that constant conversation comes in handy, because you can put to bed misconceptions. It might feel that you're repeating yourself, but it's a great opportunity to keep telling people what it is that you do, answering frequently asked questions through kind of LinkedIn status posts, and really making sure that people understand what it is that you actually do. Because this misalignment, it might be amusing, but it's actually what happens in a lot of businesses, whether big or small. So we've talked about your kind of prospects, your buyers, people that you've met at events and networking opportunities and so on. What I'm going to teach you today is how to segment those people so that when you're talking to them, you're actually telling them things that they care about. And this is what I'm going to tell you from this point onwards in this session. Okay, so there are many different types of stakeholders and buyers. And I must note that in this session, I am using the word buyers and stakeholders interchangeably. I do mean the same thing. What overall I'm trying to say is that buyers and stakeholders, they are anybody that is involved in the buying process. Anybody involved, anybody whose opinion is required, whose signature is required, whose buy-in is required, who is going to use it. That's what I'm referring to. Now, at ᴏғғʟɪᴇ, we've created quite a few different kind of buyer personas, if you like. And today I'll focus on the main 3. So you've definitely got the decision maker, who tends to be your number 1 persona. They're the ones that you really care about because they're the ones that are going to sign the check. They tend to be an executive, an MD, a business owner of some kind. And they're the decision maker, okay? And then you have what we call your gatekeepers. So your gatekeepers are people that almost act like a filter for what the organization needs. Sometimes they might call them influencers, actually, but I prefer the word gatekeeper because they're the people that will say whether you can get in. So a good example of a gatekeeper would be procurement. So if you're tendering for a certain project, those people in the kind of buying team are gatekeepers. They have a list of criteria, and you need to go through that, and you need to pass before a shortlisted group of vendors or potential vendors then get passed on to a decision maker. Okay, and then you have the user. So often in B2B, especially if you're selling equipment, pieces of kit, software, systems, your decision maker and your gatekeeper are generally not maybe the main user. So an example would be if you're selling HR software, or you're selling some equipment that's going to go on the seabed, the person that's actually going to be using that equipment offshore is unlikely to be the decision maker. So these are kind of 3 main stakeholders in the whole buying process. what I'm going to do now is show you how the cares of the individual stakeholders change. So for instance, if we focus on the decision maker, he or she will care about cost efficiencies. How is your product or service going to help them be better and reduce costs, for instance? Or how can they make sure that the little money they have to spend is actually being put towards something that is going to make an improvement in the organization? And that improvement could be sales, it could be safety, it could be profitability. They want to know that they're going to get a good return on investment from doing business with you. Okay, I'm just going to check again if there are any questions in the chat. Okay, no. Then we go on to your gatekeeper. So your gatekeeper, like I explained a little bit earlier, wants to know about your credibility. Who else have you done it for? Show us some case studies. Is it going to be easy to use? They don't want something that's going to disrupt the organization. Or if you're looking at a gatekeeper who is mainly maybe like an IT team, for instance, could be a gatekeeper, and they want to make sure that it's easy to use, that it's not going to disrupt maybe other processes that they've got or other systems. They want to make sure it's compatible. So they'll be looking at viability. You know, they want to know that there's going to be adequate customer service, that if they come into problems, that actually you are equipped and resourced as a company, as a vendor, to attend to whatever the challenges are that they might have. So that is really what the gatekeeper cares about. Now, I'm not saying that decision makers don't care about viability and credibility. They do. It's really about ranking, you know, in terms of ranking, what's the top of mind. You'll find that the decision maker will delegate a lot of the other cares, if you like. So it's not that he doesn't care about the credibility, he does, but ultimately he's relying on his IT manager or his procurement team to make sure that that stuff is sorted before it comes to him or her for a signature. I hope that makes sense. And then we've got the user. So the user could be an engineer, it could be a scientist, you know, technician, you know, whoever the user is, or an employee. They are more likely to care about functionality. Can it do this? Can it do that? Maybe features, accuracy. If you work in the oil and gas industry, when I worked in one of the companies that make petrophysics software, you know, a lot of the users cared about how accurate the data was, and you know, what the error margins would be if they change software. You know, it's really about having robust calculations and accuracy, which is something that the decision maker is not too worried about, because he's obviously trusting that the technical folk, you know, are in the best position to know all that stuff. So depending on who you're talking to, they'll have different cares. That's ultimately what I'm saying. So they want to know it's easy to use. They want to know who else has used it and the results that they got from that. So now that you know your buyers, what do you say to them? And this is where a lot of people tend to freak out a little bit. You know, they say, I don't really know what to say, because when you're in, I understand, because when you're in front of someone and you're talking to them, you've got body language, you can see whether you're on the right lines, and you can kind of change the topic if you think that you're kind of putting them off. But online, you don't really get to see that, and you just have to say stuff. I would say that you shouldn't let that put you off. If you take your offline contacts and you're able to segment them and truly understand what it is they care about, whether the person's a decision maker or a gatekeeper and a user, and I would say that they're all important, because even if a decision maker likes you and likes your product, if the gatekeeper doesn't know you, never heard of you, they can make it very difficult for you to be successful in that sale. And if the users are saying, actually, this software is going to be horrendous, the accuracy is rubbish, the quality of work is going to go down, I bet that would give the decision maker second thoughts. So all these people are important. So when you go to a networking event, or you know, if you've been doing that and you're face-to-face with people, know that everyone in the room is important, whether they're the one signing the check or not. They have a role in the whole kind of buying process. So what I'm going to show you is how to use LinkedIn to say something of value. I'm not talking about articles again, or big videos, or white papers. I'm saying how you can use your LinkedIn status post, the little, is it 1,300 characters you've got, how you can use that to add something of value to your contacts, to people that you've met offline that you now want to start engaging with online. I'll focus here on 3 different types of content that you can share in your status messages. There are lots of content out there, but again, I'm going kind of lowest denominator, lowest hanging fruit, to make it easy to just start. Because a lot of people get put off, they think it's quite a lot of work, and it can feel like quite a lot of work. But if you've got a process and a plan like we're discussing here today, it's very much doable. So the first type of content will be text and words. So just writing in there, telling a story, giving an update, just using text and words. And interestingly, LinkedIn favors text very much. So if you write something that's pure text, maybe with a couple of emojis if you want, and you leave good spacing in between your lines, the LinkedIn algorithm loves that, and it will be seen by quite a lot of people. So that's definitely one type of content. It's easy and it's quite straightforward to do. Usually with text and words, you might want to add an image or a video. So with images, it could be an image that is more conceptual. So you can use free stock photos if you wanted. It could be a picture of yourself or your team, you working at home, whatever it is. Images tend to enhance your post. So you are able to put an image. You can put a video as well. If you want to do a short video, you don't have to go too long. I mean, this could literally be a 30-second video, a 1-minute video of you talking about something. And I'll come later into what you can talk about. I'm just speaking more now around formats. And then finally, you have third-party articles. Now, there's a lot of talk, and I think there is some truth in it, that LinkedIn doesn't favor third-party articles, because ultimately when you click on it, you're basically asking people to leave the LinkedIn platform. But sharing third-party articles is still something that you can do from time to time, because if you come across a really good article that you think your contacts or your audience is going to benefit from, I would go ahead and share it. One tip for making that article go further is to make sure that you've read that article yourself and that you write within the body of your post short bullet point summaries of the article. So if it's 10 ways to increase your sales, for instance, make sure that I've gone through that article, and even just in a couple of sentences say, this is what you can get from the article, 1, 2, 3, and give people a sense of what they can expect to get in the article. There's a higher chance that they'll read your article. LinkedIn will see that there's a bit more text above this third-party article, and the algorithm is a little bit friendlier to that post. But third-party articles are a great way of supporting other businesses as well, giving them knowledge. You're also supporting the business or the company or person who wrote the article. So these are 3 types. Now there are loads, but these are 3, I believe, quite simple types of content that you could be sharing. So I'm just going to do a quick poll. If you are able to see the raise your hand option, which is under, I think it's under participants, raise your hand. If you're able to see that, if you can see it, because I know some people might not see it if they're on a phone. Could you just raise your hand if you can see the raise your hand option? Brilliant. A couple of people. Great. So if you go to participants, raise your hand. Okay. Most of you except one person, maybe. There we go. Can raise your hand. Brilliant. Okay. Good. So I can do what I was going to do. So there's this stat that I like sharing. 90% of people online, so take LinkedIn for instance, 90% of people online do not create any content, and they don't engage with any content. They just scroll and skim through content. Okay, that's 90% of people. So I'm bringing that up now because 2 things. First thing is, If you're worried that you don't have a big enough network, and so, you know, people are not going to really be seeing this content, this next thing I'm going to say is for you. And also, if you're worried that people are not seeing your content, so first of all, the network size thing, and people just not seeing your content, usually that's not true. There are people reading your content regularly, but you don't know that they are, because they're not going to comment, they won't like it or share it, but they are reading it. And the number of people that Sarah and I have had in kind of in our business life that have been following us for following us for years online, and never liked or commented on anything, but then they contact us 2-3 years later and say, actually, could we speak about this, because I'm needing your services, I've been following your articles, I've been following you on LinkedIn. It's quite a lot. So just to put aside any concerns that people are not seeing what you're doing, that's not true. 9% of people will comment and like. Okay, 9% of people. And only 1% of people actually create content. And that's why when you create content, you stand out. You stand out big time. So with the few of us that are on the call today, how many of you already write content in some shape or form? And when I say write content, I mean, do you update your status message on LinkedIn, for instance? If you do, raise your hand, please, so I can just have a look. Brilliant. Okay, so about half of us do that. Okay, that's good. That's really good. Okay, so the rest of you, hopefully at the end of this, you'll have a bit more of an idea of how you can go about that, how you can start and get some ideas. And those people who are already doing it, we can even do it more and get even more results and value out of doing it. So again, at the Caro, we've identified over 8 content pillars. And what I mean by content pillars is a way of grouping content to make it easy to generate ideas. So I'm only going through 4 in this call today, and they're on the screen. So we've got the values and inspiration type of content. So that's one where you don't speak about your products or services. It's more a personal post where you are sharing something that has inspired you, or you're inspiring others, or you're talking about maybe your business journey and the values of your company. And it's usually just a storytelling type of post where you build trust and you're trying to trigger emotion in whoever's reading it. And this is a great one. If you're bringing people offline online, they can get to know you a bit better. Because I bet when you met them at that event or networking place that you weren't really talking inspiration there. You're probably talking small talk. So this is an opportunity for them to get to know you a little bit better. And then the second kind of pillar is research and stats. So even on this call, I have shared some stats with you. These are stats that have come from a third party. So it's not just me saying that content is important. I've been able to show you and someone else saying it and showing you actual research. And this is something you can do as well. It's a content pillar. If you've got evidence or stats to show that a certain way is the best way of doing something, or that there's definitely a problem or a challenge, that can be an opportunity for you to discuss it and put it out there in terms of a post. And you can get people to comment, because if you said, for instance, that do you know that 80% of business owners don't understand their own accounts, for instance? You perk the interest of a business owner that doesn't understand their accounts. And you might start a conversation where people are talking about the different ways that they've maybe tried to combat that challenge, and you get a good conversation going. You learn a little bit more about the challenges of your audience, and they learn a little bit more about your knowledge and what you do as a business. So stats can be a great way of putting facts out there that, that are not sort of made up by you. It's not just what you said, but actual stats and research, and beginning a conversation around that. You also have kind of industry challenges as well. So if there's an emerging trend, or there's a challenge right now in the industry, so for instance, right now it could be low oil price, or it could be retaining staff. How do you retain your best talent right now in this difficult period? It's a challenge right now. So if you're some kind of guru headhunter or leadership professional, you might want to start writing posts around the current challenge, because being topical is huge. You know, if you're able to feel the pulse of your audience, feel the pulse of your contacts, what is keeping them up at night now, and you can speak about that, even if it's just to drive conversation. You don't have to have the answer, but you have to be willing to bring up the subject. So don't worry about whether you know the answer. You don't need to know the answer. You really just need to ask great questions about the current challenges that people are having. And finally, showcase your offerings. What we find is people rush to showcasing their offering too quickly. And I bet you've experienced that before, where someone connects with you and straight away you get a pitch. You know, you get 4 paragraphs where they've got links to all this stuff, and they want you to sign up for something, and you're telling you about their products and services. You feel quite frustrated, right? Exactly. It's like a relationship. You just met someone, and you know, straight away they're, you know, drawing pictures of how your children will look like, type thing. So that's quite scary, isn't it? But if you build the relationship, you know, you share your hopes and dreams, your personal values, things that have inspired you in life, and over time, you get to the point where you can take the next step in the relationship. That's more the natural progression. It's very similar in business. So like I said, there are different content pillars. We've got at least 4 others, but these ones are the kind of the lowest hanging fruit that you can start using today. And I'll show you some examples. So it's all about engaging in conversations. Remember, when you're talking, you really want people to talk back. So it's not just putting something out there into the ether. It's really about people feeling something that moves them to comment, send you a private message, like, share, that sort of thing. And it takes practice. So just to show you a couple of examples, this guy's a great guy. If you're not connected with him on LinkedIn, he's a good guy to just look up and see what you think. He is a technical copywriter, and he does have a big network. And yeah, he writes copy, but he's got, gosh, I think he's got like 20,000 connections or something, or followers. But he constantly adds value. I'm showing you this particular post he's put up because of 2 reasons. One reason is that it just shows you how you can use that value, that inspiration pillar. So he's talking about the biggest mistake he's made as a business owner, which is he stopped marketing his business in 2015. And he said he really suffered from it in 2016 because it became his worst financial year, because he just didn't say anything. People that he knew before had forgotten him. He says people had forgotten about him. He was no more relevant. He had lost ground. And this affected him professionally and personally because he just stopped talking online. And this is really topical, which brings me to the second reason I'm showing you this. He put this out 6 days ago because I got the screenshot last night. So he put this out 6 days ago. So you can imagine that this is really topical right now for people who are trying to cut marketing budget, are not really on social media, have stopped doing anything for their business right now because of the current situation. And he's basically encouraging them and inspiring them, saying, don't be me in 2015. Don't be forgotten, be relevant. Keep talking, keep having conversations, find ways to keep talking to people and remind people that you're out there and that you add value. This is another type of post. Again, Sam Ravlin, somebody that I think is good to know. She's probably one of the most prolific LinkedIn users out there and one of the best LinkedIn trainers in the business. And she works very well with kind of B2B people. So businesses selling to other businesses. And this is a post she put out saying, you know, I'm in Loughborough today. She's going to see a client. So she hasn't sold anything in the post per se, but she's telling you as the contact, as her connection, is telling you where she is today, what she's doing, the kind of training she's delivering, to whom she's delivering it to. And if you click see more, she gives you more detail about what this training is. And then there's just an image of her, you know, on the way to the client's office. Now this got, you know, almost 100 likes and got comments. So she's kind of indirectly told you what she does as a business. And she's gonna have her current network seeing this and getting that reminder, oh yeah, Sam does this. Oh, that's what she does. Oh, she works with those kind of companies. Oh, she's able to do that training. Oh yes, that's true. And they might need that service or they might know someone that needs that service. In the same vein, people who don't know Sam will see this and go, oh, is that what she does? And this is far more, I guess, palatable than saying, come and get some LinkedIn training right now, you know, $2.99, blah, blah, blah. You know, this is really her just saying what she's up to. And then this post is me from about a month ago when we did the CaroCon. And it just came from all the great feedback that we had after the event. We had about 200 people there. We had 29 speakers, and we got lots of good feedback. And what I did was just to include the actual quotes that people were saying to us, what people had texted us and said to us face to face, and tag some of the people who had been at the event. And again, that got, you know, some good engagement. You can see the number of views, the number of likes and comments. Well, I haven't sold anything in there, but what it did was, first of all, remind people who were at the event what a great event it was. It triggered some more comments coming back to us and some more positive feedback. What it also did, it made people who weren't at the event to wonder what the event was about and want to know more. And I did have a couple of people say, oh, what's the CaroCon? When did you have that? Will you do another one? You know, when's the next event? So that kind of thing. So just to give you an example. And finally, my final example is Mick Beavers of Control Valve Solutions. So you may know Mick. So this is an example of actually sharing your products and services. So he's shared this software. So I know CVS well, they're one of our clients. So he shared the software and he just got a screen grab of, you know, of his screen basically. And he's just said a few lines about the software and how it's going to make life easier for his clients. He's talked about how proud he is of the CVS team and giving, you know, some timelines and said people, you know, should be ready to download the app when it launches. And you can see the amount of engagement he's gotten on that post. Now he mixes it up. If you look at Mick's profile, he's not always talking about this. Sometimes he's talking about his team. Sometimes he's talking about what he got up to over the weekend, or he's talking about a new client that's just come on board. So it's having that balanced mix. These are just some examples. So just a quick kind of exercise. Now you don't need to do it in the chat and I don't need to see it. But when you think about the last few days and even weeks, what are 3 things that you've been doing maybe? So maybe that you've done in the last, let's say, couple of weeks. Think about what you've done. It could be for clients, you know, you've done with partners or associates, or think about things that you've reflected on, you know, things that you've had more time to think, obviously, during this period. So things that you've reflected on, things that have helped you throughout this period. Are there products or services that you have within your business that have progressed? Maybe you're a web developer and you know, maybe you've got a new website, or you're developing a new product for your clients, or a new service, for instance. Can you come up with 3 things? And you can just write them down. You know, I don't need to see them, don't you tell us, but 3 things that you could be talking about on LinkedIn, that you could say, you know, what are some great stuff that you could be talking about using the content pillars, looking at the examples that I've just given of 4 actually quite different examples of LinkedIn status posts that got good engagement. Great, I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. So I'll just mute myself for a couple of minutes and give you a chance to write down 3 things. Okay. Hopefully you have some ideas, even if you didn't get up to 3, but at least hopefully that's kind of giving you some idea of what you could be writing about on LinkedIn. You don't need a big, you know, essay, but something that could really add value straight away. So this is a question that sometimes we get, but how does this lead to sales? Okay. I think sometimes we struggle with the whole idea of not pitching our product or service straight away. The process feels long-winded. Why can't I straight away say to someone what I do? I can give a personal example of where I made mistakes. So since Sarah and I have come together, you know, I've connected with people on LinkedIn, for instance, and a couple of times I've gotten not the kind of engagement or I guess feedback or reaction from the person. And what it turned out is that when I've connected with them, I've basically said, hi, I'm Yekemi Otaru. I'm the co-founding director of Dukaru. Dukaru provides sales and marketing consultancy for companies in the energy and technology sector. I'd love to connect with you. Regards, Yekemi, right? And I'm thinking this is great because when you connect with someone, you have to introduce yourself, you know, say what you do, because that's just polite, right? Well, most of the time it failed because the people either didn't connect or they just assumed straight away, as related, the 2 points are related, they assumed straight away that I was selling to them. By me introducing myself and saying what I do, I've automatically made them feel like I'm going to pitch to them. So it doesn't work. The sale comes later when you engage with them and you start a conversation. So an example of success in the business is, for instance, we had a client, a big client in the kind of technology sector that worked with us over a period of 9 months. And we used LinkedIn to engage. Sarah led this project. So she used LinkedIn to engage with potential buyers, you know, prospects. And her messages weren't, hi, I'm, you know, Sarah Downs, I work for Dukaru, this is what I do. Far less, I guess, formal and salesy. So the way she engaged with those people, she connected with them. And through that process, we actually managed to secure 70 meetings with key decision makers for this client over a 9-month period. That's one way to use it. I've had people online just through sharing work that I'm doing, saying, here, this is where we are, we're at the client's office, we're doing this, have people send me private messages to find out more about what I do. We've had clients, even in the kind of creative industry, you know, like branding experts, web developers, get business because they showcased their work. They just showcased something they did for a client. Again, not come and buy from me, this is, you know, £1,000 or anything like that, but just showcasing the work that they do and thanking the client and being proud of the work that they did. They got, you know, leads, people coming to them and saying, yes, I would like to know more about what you do. So does it lead to sales? Yes. Is it instant and overnight? No. It's a process and it's building a relationship and it's a more sustainable relationship. You're far more likely to develop relationships where people keep coming back and there's mutual value. So when I talk about mutual value, for instance, we can again go back to the different kind of buyers. So the decision makers are going to get their answers to frequently asked questions answered through some of the stuff you're putting out on your LinkedIn status messages. So they don't have to ask you because you are regularly answering those questions anyway. It's like you're reading their mind. They understand the quality of work that you put out because you're sharing case studies, you know, things that you're doing for your clients. You're sharing feedback and testimonials. So they have an idea around performance, what they can get from you, and whether they're going to get return on investment. Your gatekeeper is building trust and credibility. They understand how you support your community, especially when you're talking about procurement teams. They're really interested in what you're giving back to the community. So if you're sponsoring your local football team or you're running a marathon to raise money for charity, that's all stuff that all these buyers care about. And if they've met you before, you maybe didn't tell them you're a marathon runner, but you have the opportunity to keep talking to them through online engagement. And your user understands how you make life easier. So he or she is reading your post and seeing, oh, is that how it works? Is that how it works? Oh, that's the functionality it's got. And they know what to expect from working with you because they're getting to know you more and more, and they'll get more comfortable, and then the barriers come down, and then you can bring them on side, and that helps your sale go through ultimately. Okay, so how do you start? So if you're at zero, for instance, like you're not doing anything online because, you know, the offline events and networking have been working for you for years, how do you start doing this online? So the first step is definitely to connect with offline contacts. Okay, so you already have offline contacts. Are your offline contacts connected with you online? Do you have a stack of business cards that are just sitting there and you haven't connected? One trick people miss, for instance, is when you go to an event or you're invited for an event and you get a delegate list. Do you go through that list and see the different people who are on that list who are at the event? And do you go away and connect with them? You have a great conversation opener. You know, you're not just anybody. You're saying, oh, you know, we met at so-and-so event, and I'll be delighted to connect with you. So you have an advantage, like I said at the start. These are people that have met you in some shape or form. You have something in common. So it's not cold, it's actually warm. So make sure that you connect with offline contacts, people that you've met before, business cards you have in your drawer, delegate lists from past events. Connect, connect, connect. And then segment them by type of buyer. Is this person a decision maker? Are they likely to be a gatekeeper? Or will they be more of a user of my product? And then make notes about what they care about. I've shown you some examples of what they'll care about, and I appreciate that's quite general and generic for the purposes of this session. But in your situation, in your industry, you will know what kind of questions these people always ask you before they make a purchase. What do the decision makers want to know? What do the gatekeepers want to know? What do the users want to know? Are there any people in the organization that are quite influential, that what they think matters? What is it that you could be telling them to make life easier for them, to help them actually be an advocate for you within their organization? And finally, create a plan to engage online. It might seem easy now where, you know, you're working from home and things are a little bit quiet compared to normal business life, so you start. But I assure you that when things become busy again, and things will gradually get back to normal, that this can fall by the wayside and you can forget that kind of yin yang of online, offline conversations. So creating a plan and almost diarizing your engagement with people online, and I'm talking specifically about LinkedIn in this case, could help you make this a habit so that you're always making the best of all the offline contacts that you have with people. Okay, so I wanted to share this quickly, kind of the 411 rule. I came across it, gosh, it's 2012, and it served me well. And it's when I talked to a lady who was VP of social media at a company called SAS. They're a big kind of software company in the US, or SAS. I think that's what they call themselves, SAS. So she told me about the 411 rule. Now, this 411 rule is quite powerful, and it helps with that whole balancing of conversations online. So what it says is that if you've got 6 pieces of content that you want to put out in a week, make sure that 4 out of that 6 is not about you. It's not about how amazing you are or how amazing your products and services are. It should be celebrating another business. It should be talking about something going on in the community. It should be maybe sharing something third-party related. But 4 should not be really about you promoting your products and services. Then 1 piece of content could be just a fun content, you know, just fun, kind of more informal content. And I know that sometimes when things are not too formal on LinkedIn, you do get the LinkedIn police that say, oh, this is not Facebook. But if you look at those very posts that people say, this is not Facebook, they are the posts that get the most engagement. They get the most likes, the most comments, and the most engagement. So 1 out of the 6 should be something lighthearted and fun. And then finally, 1 post that could be a sell, you know, you talking specifically about your products and services. It could be that you're doing a webinar, you're doing an event, or there's a discount, or there's a new service or product that you've got on. 1 out of 6. The reason this works is because you know what it's like when you're talking to somebody that's only talking about themselves. They're only speaking about themselves. It's really frustrating to listen to them. What this 411 rule ensures is that you're not always talking about yourself, that you're balanced and people see you as genuine, because you're not just promoting yourself, you're promoting your values, you're inspiring people. And when you find something that would be useful for someone, you share it. It makes you more trustworthy, it builds your credibility and shows that you're confident in what you do, so you don't have the need to always kind of be pushing sales all the time. So I thought that was quite a good rule to share with you, because if you're going to start kind of sharing content online, having that balance is key. and it will make it easier for you to engage people early on. So just quickly showing you what I'm discussing with you today rather is communications. But overall, there's the huge picture. We have the ᴏғғʟɪɪ framework, the ᴏғғʟɪ script framework, which shows you all aspects of really business growth. And what we're talking about today is the C of the script. But if you're doing this content and you're pushing stuff out, but you don't really have a strategy around what you're doing, your aim is not to build rapport, and you don't understand your industry, so you don't really know the challenges and the who's who and the structure in your industry. If you don't have a process, or when you do get those sales leads, you don't have a process that takes it right through to fruition, and you don't have the right team with the right skills, then what we're talking about today actually doesn't mean that much. So there's definitely a wider picture, and that's why I'm just showing you this to show you that there's a bigger picture. But we're obviously focusing on the communication part. But as ᴏғғʟɪ, we're able to help our clients across the board. Now I'm coming nearly to the end of this, and what I'm going to do now is share with you some free stuff. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is 50 content ideas, specifically for businesses that are selling to other businesses. And in a minute, I'm going to share the link on the chat. So you don't have to put in your email address or anything to get this. You just click on that link and the content will be downloaded straight away, and you get it as a PDF. If you haven't yet, download our ᴏғғʟɪ app, okay? So if you just go to the App Store, if you're on Android or Apple, just go straight and just search for ᴏғғʟɪ. You get a ᴏғғʟ app. We have resources on there, and we're adding stuff there all the time. Like this webinar has been recorded, and that's going to be in the app, so it's on, you can watch it again anytime. And finally, I've created a template for planning your weekly content. So if you want to be putting out content every week, this helps you just plan it out. If you've got an idea, you can start to develop, who it's for, what you might want to add, whether it's an image or a video, whether it's just text, that kind of thing, and the type of, I guess, buyer it's for. Is this for a decision maker, or is this for a user type thing? So what I'm going to do is stop sharing for a second. Actually, maybe not. Hang on a second. Let me grab the links. Sharing is paused, but give me a second. Grab the links. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to the chat window. Hopefully that works. Okay, so if you are able to see the two links I've just put in the chat, could you please raise your hand so I know I've done it right? Super. Super. Okay, great. So if you just grab those and put it in your kind of browser, you'll get those PDFs. One is an image and one's a PDF, and you get those easily. All right, brilliant. Super. Okay, those open fine as well. Thanks for that feedback. Okay. So maybe you're thinking actually you'd like a little bit more support. This all sounds great, but maybe you feel that you need a little more support and a bit more guidance around this. We have mini content strategy sessions. Now they're mini because normally when we do like a proper strategy session where we go into a lot of detail, it's half a day of time. But we've created this kind of mini content strategy, and really what I'm going to do is go through what I've gone through today, but in more detail and specifically for your business. So we don't have the kind of generic speak anymore. We're specifically looking at your business and what you want to be focusing on right now in your business. So who is the buyer? So we go into stakeholders and make sure that we name all of them and we understand what each of them care about. That's what I will be doing in the session. And then what content we should be sharing with those people. So what themes are emerging and how you would do it. So a bit of a plan. So what you can expect from this is that you'll have an opportunity to fill in the gaps. So what we'll do is send you in a questionnaire type form, which we've created specifically for mini content strategy, where you can give me a little bit of background about your industry, the different people you've met, the kind of events you've been attending, and then we go away and do some research. We research into your business, into your competitors to give us a bigger idea of kind of the industry landscape you're in. And then we have a 60-minute call, and during that call, we nail your content strategy. So we nail your buyers, what they care about, we nail what content you should be sharing, and we create a plan. Now, this is usually £250, but for today, for people on this call, it's just gonna be 82 plus VAT. And that works out at being under £100. And it's huge, huge value. And we understand that things like this, people tend to put it in a back burner during really busy times, but this is absolutely the time to be looking at this and to start having those online engagements and benefiting from all the work that you do when you're, at events and doing networking. Why not have the double kind of edged sword where you're getting the best of both worlds? So if this is something that you're interested in, like I say, it's today only. So we've got a page that you can just go on. Just give me a second again. So we've got a page where you can go on, and I'll put the link in the chat in a second. And you go on and just put your email address. I will be in touch with you within 24 hours to have a quick chat about what it is you want to do and set up your 60-minute call along with sending you the forms. And it literally be done in the next week. You will have your strategy, and we'll help you online to make sure that you're getting the best out of it. So what I'm going to do now is just put the link in the chat, and feel free to go on that page and put in your email address. Okay. Okay, great. So I'm going to pause now. I feel like I've been talking for absolutely ages. I'm just going to pause now, and I'm going to turn on my video, and I'm willing to take any questions that you've got. So we'll just spend if you've got questions, the next 5 to 10 minutes, if you let me know your questions through the chat, and we can also unmute. Sarah, can we unmute so people can maybe just speak up if they want to do that instead of putting in the chat? But yeah, I would love to take questions. Thank you for your time. Okay, Sarah's saying people can unmute themselves, so feel free to do that.
ᴏ織, it's Katrina here.
Hi,
Thank
Katrina.
you for that. That was a really good session. I've taken lots of notes, which anybody who knows me knows I don't often take very many notes, so thank you for that. My question probably would be around, when you're connecting with people, and I've had varying levels of success connecting with people on LinkedIn over the years, but what kind of message do you generally, you spoke about obviously not leading with a sale when you're doing that connection piece. So what kind of types of things are you popping in that when when you personalize your connection request?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll answer, and then I'll have Sarah answer a little bit, because we tend to come at things slightly differently, and I think it's really valuable to have both sides. So what I do after learning that introducing myself wasn't a good idea, I tend to tell them why I'm connecting with them. So I'll be like, for instance, hi Bob, I noticed your profile that you work in a similar industry to me. And then I just kind of say something like, ask him a specific question, like, what are you finding is the biggest challenge right now in your industry? And so he sees me then, or the idea is that he sees me then as a peer, like in the same industry as him, and potentially having the same sort of challenge. Sometimes I will say, and this one, a lot of people use this, they say, I'm growing my network with like-minded people, and if it's okay with you, I'd love to connect. Sometimes I say that.
I always say no to those ones. I always think they're just trying to tap into my network.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, it just totally depends. I think the higher up they are, the more careful you have to be, because those people are I mean, you're absolutely right. They're more suspicious. They're busy people. They don't want just anyone in their network. So if it's a little bit suspicious, they'll say no. For me, the best ones where I feel most comfortable, which is why I write a lot on LinkedIn, or I try to anyway, is when people like or comment on my post that I'm not connected to. So I would just write something and thank them for liking my post about a certain subject and saying I wanted to connect. And they always say yes, because they've already engaged with something I've said or written. And so I thank them for that and then connect. But yeah, it'd be good to hear what Sarah does, because she does a lot of prospecting where I don't really prospect on LinkedIn. Sarah?
Hello. So yeah, I agree with everything that you've said. What I would say is when you talk about like-minded people within an industry, I try and avoid the word industry and or say what that industry is, because a lot of people blanket that and they'll just say the word industry, but they're actually sending that message out to multiple industries. Whereas as soon as you personalize it down to potentially like oil and gas, or even further down into subsea, etc., they're the ones that actually get the highest conversion with response. So what I would say, Katrina, is just because you don't like that doesn't mean that they won't like that. And it goes back to that, treat each other how you want to be treated, but don't sell to others as you would like to be sold to, because we're not all the same. I think what it does right at the beginning is create that, I guess, point of reference to where somebody is. I also think it's different depending on whether the person you're connected to is a commercial leader or a technical leader. Sometimes you need to be a little bit more direct with technical people, because if they don't care so much about building their industry, their network, so they're less likely to connect unless you have that, I guess, golden nugget. So that's where sometimes I would maybe like ᴏғʟɪᴇ does, ask a question, but make that question very relevant to what they do as an occupation. Whereas with business leaders and commercial people, I wouldn't do so much of that. I would keep it more generic, because as soon as you do more than that, they'll typically close it down because they think you're going to sell to them.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. I've got a question. Have you noticed any trends in the times of day people are on social media at the moment? That's a great question, because I like to monitor stuff like that, and it's definitely changed during this whole lockdown. So before, I find on LinkedIn in particular, if you want to put something out, typically quite early in the morning, like from like 8 a.m. to like 11 a.m. is a good time, especially closer to 8 a.m. if you're targeting executives. So very busy, leaders and business owners who they usually wake up early, and they might go for a run, and then they might just scroll their LinkedIn and stuff like that. And when it comes to like lunchtime, thereabouts are not really on social media, whereas maybe your typical employee level might be. So again, it depends on who you're trying to target. So are you targeting like the business owner, or just like, regular people? Well, regular people, you know what I mean? And then later in the evening is really busy. You have like from 5 p.m. right up to like 9 p.m. It can be quite busy on LinkedIn. However, with the whole lockdown, it's flipped on its head quite a lot, because people are just on it all the time or not on it at all. I remember, was it last week? Myself and our marketing coordinator, Sarah Dickey, we were putting out stuff, and it looked like no one was on Wednesday for some reason. Like no one was on social media at all. And what's happened is that people are dipping in and out of social media all day now. And I think that midweek activity we used to see, so we normally say Wednesday and Thursdays are when you have the most activity in the normal business environment. That's when you have the most activity, but that's not the case anymore. It's not when you have the most activity anymore. It's just all the time. So I would say, without me going to do like specific research, I would say that right now with the lockdown, we can assume that people are dipping in and out of social media whenever. There's no midweek activity. It's all week activity, really. And if you're putting out content during this time, I would encourage you to do a bit of a test yourself. Wake up at 8 a.m. or whatever, put something out in the morning, put something out in the middle of the day, put something out in the evening, on different days, and just see where you're getting the most engagement. With the current situation, I generally try to avoid in the evenings, because my hunch is that people are on it during the day so much that they tend to just sign off. And so that flurry of activity we used to see around 5 p.m., for instance, is not typically there. But it'd be good to hear on the call if anybody else has experienced certain changes in activity on social media, in particular LinkedIn. Rebecca has asked that question. Thanks for that, Rebecca. Anyone has seen anything different on activity on LinkedIn?
From feedback from people in my network, I think the first few weeks of lockdown, people were finding that they were being very distracted by social media. They were on it a lot within that first couple of weeks. So everyone seems to be trying to get strict with themselves now. So it's less distraction and it's more productive time being spent on it. But then that's the people that are working. I'm not sure if that's the same for those that have been furloughed or, you know, are taking leave at the moment. So I'm not sure.
I'm never off just now, Sarah, so definitely the people that are furloughed are too busy. We're definitely looking for people to speak to online at the moment.
Be a nice distraction from children.
Exactly, and uni.
Yeah. There's so Rebecca's actually asked a follow-up question. How are you getting through the noise of COVID-19? I know this is such a tricky one, because with COVID-19, I feel like people feel like they have to mention it in almost every post. It needs to be related in some shape or form. So getting through the noise can be tricky. I think it's getting easier as time goes on. I think those first few weeks, it was like, you know, it was all everyone was thinking about. And we have the challenge where if you're trying to continue with your business, you're trying to continue talking about your business and putting your business out there, some people are getting negative, you know, backlash. So they're getting people, being annoyed that they're still trying to talk about their business in these difficult times. So what I would say is that as long as you're being authentic and not being, what's the word, like your content isn't completely disregarding what's happening in the world, you know, there's a sensitivity about it. I would say, you know, keep putting stuff out and you will break through the noise. So an example for me would be last week, I put out a post, nothing to do with COVID-19, it was a text post with a picture, and I was, some of you, I don't know, some of you may have seen it when I said a prophet is never appreciated in his hometown. And I spoke a little bit about that. It's something that is said a lot in my culture when you're trying to do something great in your town and people are not taking you seriously because they knew you when you're in diapers. But this is something that I think a lot of business owners and innovators and, you know, people in business struggle with on a business level. They're trying to do something and they're not getting through. So even though we have COVID-19 out there, there's still some challenges that are real to the human race. You know, there are still challenges that people are facing, that they're feeling, and they're feeling it now more than ever before. So I think that if you focus on what those things are and you talk about them, obviously with the sensitivity of COVID-19, that you're still kind of, you know, being sensitive and cognizant of what's going on, I think you will be able to push through the noise. Earlier, I showed you John Asperian, who did a post. So he did a post last week. In that post, there was nothing about COVID-19, but he was talking about people's tendency right now to not do marketing or to just stay silent. He didn't mention COVID, you know, he didn't mention the coronavirus or anything, but he found something that people are going to be feeling right now that he can tell a story around because he's been there. So I hope that answers your question, Rebecca. It's not sort of a straightforward answer, but if you can find something that people might be feeling right now and talk about it from an authentic place, I think people are desperate for that kind of thing right now.
ᴇᴛᴡᴏ, is LinkedIn favoring or pushing back on keywords such as COVID, coronavirus? Has there been any change?
No, I don't think there has been. there was a ban, somebody put a ban, was it Google or Facebook, who had started suppressing posts like that because they were worried about false news, like false information being spread. But I read something beginning of last week, I believe it was, that they had lifted it. But yeah, our post, we've put hashtag coronavirus a few times and it doesn't seem to have negatively affected the post, I don't think. Okay, so probably have time for one more question if anyone has one. I appreciate that time's far spent, but if you've got another question, please just shout out or put it in the chat, or feel free to email me directly at yekemi@dukaro.com and ask me a question, and I'll be delighted to answer the question. Again, I've put the link in the chat if you would like to have that session with me to create your mini content strategy. The deal expires today, so basically it won't be there again. It won't be there tomorrow because it's such a kind of high value and we brought the price down significantly. But apart from that, I want to thank everyone for attending the call. I know that it's Easter Monday, which I realized late. So apologies for making you join a call on a Monday, but I appreciate your time and speak to you soon.